The Penguins continue their Western road trip tonight in Anaheim, where they'll take on a struggling Anaheim Ducks team. Hunter and I are going to get you ready for that and more on this edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast.
Your Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. You can follow me across all social media platforms at synonym for wet, joined as always by my co-host, the one and only Hunter Hodes. You can follow him on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can give our show's account a follow at LO_Penguins. And of course, we appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. Don't forget that we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. Plus, if you follow us on YouTube, don't forget to hit the notification button so you'll be among the first to know when we drop our daily Monday through Friday episodes. Before we get going today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $20 off your first purchase. Hunter, the Penguins, they're continuing their tour through the West and California tonight when they take on the Anaheim Ducks. It's another late night hockey, something that a sicko like you absolutely loves. Like I said, 10 o'clock face-off at the Honda Center against a Ducks team that really isn't taking many steps. They are one of the worst teams in the league. They are on the kind of slide that almost I had to run the numbers twice just to make sure I got them right. They are currently on a 4-game losing streak. They've lost 8 of their last 10. And on their trip through the Eastern Conference in the last week and a half before returning home, they went 1-5. So this is a Ducks team that, well, there's really not a whole lot to write home about. And it's another massive opportunity for the Penguins to dig themselves out of the hole that they have dug themselves to start the year. But I don't mean to continue this pile on of the Ducks, but Hunter, before we hit record, you hit me with a stat that sounded almost unbelievable about this Ducks team. So why don't you tell the people that stat?
Yeah, so for my notes today, I dug into some of the numbers for the Ducks, and they are horrendous defensively this year. In fact, Pat, and to everyone listening, they have given up the most high danger chances at 5-on-5 this year. 506. The next closest team is 488, and that is the San Jose Sharks. The Penguins will see them next week to finish up, to get close to finishing up this Western swing. So the Penguins, they're going to be facing two of the worst defensive teams in the league here in the next few days. The Ducks, they just can't do anything defensively, especially in front of their own net. The Penguins have to take advantage of that tonight if they want to win this game. Though, I will say this, even though the Ducks are really bad defensively this year, they have two really strong goalies with the way they're playing this year. And the Penguins saw one of them, Pat, earlier this season when the Penguins beat the Ducks 2-1 in overtime. Sidney Crosby, obviously the biggest reason for that win, scored both goals. The Ducks went up 1-0 in the first period. Penguins were able to tie it in the third before Crosby had one heck of an overtime winner. Penguins outshoot the Ducks 45-23 in that game, but Lukas Dostal, their young goalie, had a .956 save percentage. He tried everything in his power to win the Ducks that game, just came up a bit short. So far this year, he is 11-13-4, 2.96 goals against average, .907 save percentage. Also, John Gibson, he's played 19 games, so it's kind of been a 1A, 1B, 2.86 goals against average, .911 save percentage. So he actually has a higher save percentage than their younger goalie, Dostal, who before the season was outplaying Gibson for a little bit. I will say this, John Gibson these last few years has not been playing well. I will say I think he had a little bit of that Ducks curse, with him just because of how bad they were, and defensively they were awful in front of them, but he also was not doing himself any favors. The fact that he has over a .910 save percentage on this bad Ducks team, I do think, shows that there is at least a decent goalie in there. And I think he's eventually going to get traded. I would not be surprised if it's during this trade deadline, considering that, the Ducks have really talked about this for the last few years. So whoever the Penguins face tonight it's going to be a challenge because of the way both goalies are playing. That the Ducks have that going for them back.
They do. And as much as I am getting a little tired of the John Gibson trade rumors because they have been floating around for the last couple of years and it has not led to anything in fruition. That said, I think you're right. There is still a good goalie in there. Is he the John Gibson of the 2010s where he was one of the best goalies in the league? Not anymore, but there still very much is a serviceable starting goaltender in John Gibson. But if you're a contending team that is looking to get him, you're probably going to make him your 1B, kind of like he is with Anaheim.
Not in Carolina. I think Carolina would be all over that type of trade.
I do too, but I look at it as I don't think, at least through the stretch run, maybe into the playoffs, you can put the saddle on him. Yeah. But if you acquire him at the deadline and then ride him out the rest of the way, you're probably going to lose some steam. But having him as your 1B and then giving him the reins in the playoffs might not be the worst idea because, like you said, this is a Ducks team that just cannot defend whatsoever. And yet both him and Dostal have been able to record save percentages over 900 as well as keep their GAA under 3. So at the very least, the two of them are trying their absolute hardest to keep this team at least somewhat watchable, because then you dig into the rest of the roster. Troy Terry having himself an okay year, 15 goals, 20 assists, 35 points in 43 games. Ryan Strome, not too bad of a season, 7 goals, 19 assists, 26 points. Frank Vetrano having a pretty good year himself, 25 points in 46 games, 12 of those are goals. So this is kind of a toxic mix for the Anaheim Ducks this year. They can't really defend, they can't score, but they're getting okay goaltending. Penguins are really going to have to take advantage of all of that tonight.
Right. And I think also with the Ducks, they need more of their kids, I think, to take that next step. They have a good amount of young talent on this team. That's good. I think they just need to turn that next step into being great. You know, you look at some of their other young players this year, Pat Cutter Gauthier, 7 goals, 20 points in 47 games. That's fine, but I think he definitely still has more to give, which I think he'll eventually get to. I mean, he's still very early in his NHL career. Mason McTavish, same stats, 7 goals, 20 points. I still think he also has more to give there. You have Alex Killorn, Leo Carlsson. I think Leo Carlsson is going to be a bit better down the line. I still think he has more to give. They also did just get back Trevor Zegras, which is good news for them. He's only played in 25 games this year, 4 goals, 10 points during that time. We've talked about him and some trade rumors that where his name has come up, where we think Kyle Dubas could have interest in him, considering that he could use a change of scenery. Well, he'll get to see firsthand how Zegras is playing tonight. I know he had been out for a little bit before coming back for this week, but still, be nice to see how he plays in this game. So the Ducks, they have some pieces. It just takes a bit to get that losing out of the organization because it's been in there for so long. I still feel like they need, though, a little bit more high-end talent in this lineup of the Penguins. They have a pretty good opportunity tonight. The Ducks are not good defensively. They haven't been able to score that much lately. If you can figure out a way to really make life hell for one of their two goaltenders, Penguins have a really good shot of winning this game, especially also if they can win that special teams battle with how their power play is going. Not sure at this moment which goalie they will start. I could totally see them going to Nedeljkovic yet again for another start, considering the way that he played in LA. I could also see them going to Blomqvist after the way that he played against Washington with how he gave the Penguins a chance in that game. So curious decisions from Mike Sullivan. And also, Pat, we should mention good news that Rickard Rakell is back skating with the team. Hopefully, again, everything is okay with him and his family. It looks like he's going to be in the lineup tonight, though.
Yeah, that is very good news. Basically, some reporting from Taylor Haas said that he did return to the team, was at practice yesterday. His wife was released from the hospital, saying that she's on the right track. So that is great news for Rickard Rakell and his family. We love to hear that. One thing to add before we throw it to break, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Penguins in the second segment, but let's keep the focus for a quick second here on the Ducks. Couple quick things about them. One, we're going to see some old friends once again tonight. They have Brian Dumoulin on defense, the 2-time Stanley Cup champion with the Penguins, and also a good chance we could see another guy who had just a cup of coffee here in Pittsburgh, and that is Jansen Harkins. So two former Penguins playing tonight, but keeping it on that defense, it's a tough unit to take a look at, and it kind of tells you why this team is where they are. Their first pair, Jackson Lacombe and Radko Gudas. We know about Gudas. He does bring a veteran presence to that team, a physicality and a seriousness that they do kind of need as an organization. But if he's on your top pairing, things probably aren't going all that well. Dumoulin and Olin Zellweger on the second pairing. Dumo, this is probably about his ceiling at this point in his career, second pairing defenseman, not quite what he was in his prime with the Penguins. And then on their third pair, former Rangers captain Jacob Trouba, who I'm curious to see how he plays, because it really did feel like the weight of being both the Rangers captain and being constantly in trade rumors probably affected his game. I wouldn't be shocked to see him play a solid game tonight, just because you're on a team with no expectation. You're a veteran leader just by default because you're on a very young team now. But I do think, putting aside his antics, we have talked those to death here and everywhere else. I do think a fresh start like this for Trouba could make him look a little bit more like the defenseman that the Rangers thought they had.
Right. I think with Jacob Trouba, they paid him to be something that he's not. Like, he was never going to be a top pairing shutdown defenseman for them. I really do think the Rangers low-key missed the eval on that. He was decent in Winnipeg, but he was also someone that I think his ceiling was always a second pair guy, in my opinion. His game deteriorated these last couple of years. And where he is now in Anaheim, I think this is kind of where his ceiling is. He's not good at defending anymore. He's not going to really give you a lot of offense. We don't need to sit here and joke about the chicken wings and all that. That's just low-hanging fruit, Pat. Let's just say that. Yeah. But I think, in all seriousness, his ceiling is kind of where he is in Anaheim. Someone who can give you 13, 14 minutes a night. And if you send him out against third and fourth liners, I don't think he'll crush you. But with the Rangers, Pat, they were sending him out there playing against top competition, and he was getting killed on a nightly basis. I just think the Rangers totally messed that up, gave him way too much money, way too much term. They got lucky that a team like the Ducks needed a veteran presence like this, and the Rangers didn't have to retain any money in that trade, which is crazy considering how much money that he is making. But you look up and down this defensive group for the Ducks, definitely need more high-end talent there. I will say I like Mintyukov. I think he's going to continue to grow into someone that can play on your second pairing, heck, maybe even your top pairing at some point. But I kind of just feel bad for him that he's babysitting Jacob Trouba a little bit this year. But it's still a unit that needs some more high-end talent, but we also should say the same about their forward group. I like some of their players there, especially some of their younger guys, but I think they still need some more high-end talent to get out of this perpetual cycle of losing.
And like you said, those young guys up front eventually have to take the next step. As much as we do talk about and enjoy, not Jacob Trouba, excuse me, Trevor Zegras' game, he really has yet to take that next step. He burst onto the scene, looked like he was going to be the next big superstar. And yeah, injuries have played a part, but even when healthy, hasn't really been able to reach that level. If he's ever able to reach that level again, that'll be nothing but good news for him and the Anaheim Ducks. But that is going to do it for our opening segment. When we come back, we're going to put the focus more on the Penguins and what they have to do tonight, as well as a look at their practice notes from Wednesday. But before we do that, we've got to tell you about our first sponsor, and that is FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keep every game exciting, especially with the NFL divisional championships coming up this weekend. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're back here on the Thursday edition of Locked On Penguins, a preview edition as the Penguins continue their Western road trip tonight against the Anaheim Ducks at the Honda Center. Face off at 10 o'clock tonight. And I am Patrick Damp, joined as always by Hunter Hodes, a man who very much loves late night hockey. It's right up his alley because he's an absolute sicko, but to each their own. Let's move the focus here, Hunter, to the Penguins who practiced yesterday. They had the day off on Monday, a much needed, or not Monday, on Tuesday, excuse me, a much needed day off for them after what has been a hectic road trip to start, and there's still so much more to go. No real changes except for the return of Rickard Rakell, even though he really wasn't working in with any of the lines at first. They were kind of easing him back in, but here is what we were looking at in practice. Rakell on the top unit once again. He was cycling in and out, but for the most part, these were the lines: Crosby, Rust, Rakell, Malkin, Bunting, Glass, Hayes, Beauvillier, Tomasino, DOC, Blake Lizotte, with Nolachari and Matt Nieto rotating. Defense, no changes: Marcus Pettersson, Chris Letang, Matt Grzelcyk, Erik Karlsson, Owen Pickering, P.O. Joseph, and a token fourth pair of Ryan Graves and Ryan Shea, the two Ryans. Really don't need to change a whole lot. They played very well against the Kings. You want to run with the hot hands here. So I think if they can just continue the way they played against LA, against the Ducks, and you get Rickard Rakell back in the lineup, that spells only good news for the Penguins.
Hey man, that was the blueprint game. That was their best game, I think, all season, right up there with the Washington game to start the season. The Toronto game is right up there as well. Like, even the way they played against the Ducks, I felt like that first win was also really good. But when I really break down those wins, I feel like this one against the Kings inches out the others by just a hair, just with the way the Penguins were able to generate against the best defensive team in the league, the way that they were able to shut down, especially in the defensive zone, the goaltending they got, the special teams they had. Just, in my opinion, their finest win of the season. If there's one change that you're probably going to see, I think it's Rickard Rakell coming in for Matt Nieto. I think Matt Nieto will come out. If you scratch Blake Lizotte for some reason, that just doesn't make any sense because Lizotte, he's a good player. He's a good player for your bottom six, decent 5-on-5, can kill penalties. But again, he's still getting low-key shafted with the deployment that he's getting with some of his line mates next to him. But again, I digress. Putting Drew O'Connor on the fourth line is interesting, but I can't say it's not warranted, Pat, because of the level we've seen him play at this year. Just hasn't been able to find any consistency. I think putting him on the fourth line kind of sends him a message saying like, hey, we're going to keep you on the lineup, but we're still not happy with where your game is right now. So we still want to see, okay, what can you do with maybe someone like a Blake Lizotte? Maybe putting O'Connor with Lizotte could maybe get him going a little bit, because for a while there, it was Acciari and Nieto next to Lizotte. And with you know anything about Mike Sullivan, you know that he really deploys that fourth line very defensively. When we saw Blake Lizotte scoring quite a bit to start the season, he wasn't getting those types of deployments. He was getting deployed a bit more in the offensive zone. So it's no wonder that a lot of his offense has gone away with how he's being deployed on the fourth line with two players who usually are known for their defense, but have not really been playing good defense this year. So I feel like with O'Connor next to him now, maybe that could allow Mike Sullivan to start deploying Lizotte in that line a bit more in the offensive zone so that he could try to get more offense out of that line. Because, yeah, you're going to drive offense from your top line. You're going to get offense from your second line, especially with the way Malkin played against LA. Bunting's been good this year. Heck, your third line lately has been awesome with Tomasino and Hayes. They have really good chemistry together. Same with Beauvillier. But you need to figure out a way to get a little bit more offense from that fourth line. I know Mike Sullivan, again, likes to deploy them defensively, but I still want to see him change it up a little bit with those deployments and try to get Blake Lizotte back on the score sheet.
That would be a really interesting approach, if you ask me, is to give Lizotte Drew O'Connor, because as you said, Lizotte has been kind of handcuffed by playing with some anchors, so to speak. So maybe DOC can be a shot in the arm to get him back onto the score sheet. And then you talk about blueprints. I think you look back at the Penguins 2-1 overtime win over the Ducks earlier in the year. Great blueprint of a game against this team. They just ran into Lukas Dostal, who played one hell of a game. and they were eventually able to break through in overtime thanks to an insane goal by Sidney Crosby. But you look at the way they played against Anaheim, they outshoot them 45-23. An early goal by the Ducks, or not early, but first period goal by the Ducks wasn't that bad of a goal, but you would like to not give that up and be playing from behind. But the Penguins didn't change a whole lot. They kept pushing and were able to break through. But everything that happened in that game, I mean, the Penguins were the dominant team no matter which way you cut it. I already went over the shots, 45-23. Alex Nedeljkovic with 22 saves, made the saves he needed to make in that game. So that certainly helped the Penguins. Then you go and look at the analytics. I mean, the Penguins had 64% of the shot attempts. They had 20 high danger chances throughout the game, only gave up 9 high danger chances against the Ducks. So when you play that team tonight, you have to bring that same level or at least something similar, because getting nearly 65% of the shot attempts, not really realistic when it comes to hockey. That's not a sustainable way to play, because eventually a team is going to push back. But you look at the high danger chances, and like you said off the top of the show, this is an Anaheim team that bleeds high danger chances. Maybe you're not going to get 20 of them, but 10, 15, 16, not out of the question. So not only do you have to continue driving play against Anaheim, you have to take advantage of the opportunities that you get, because you know that whether it's Dostal or Gibson, they have been able to make saves this year. So when you get those chances, you have to bury them. And as we've seen from the Penguins so far this calendar year, with the exception of a couple games, they have been burying their chances.
I feel like I say this every time the Penguins play a hot goaltender, Pat. It's got to be another classic Michael Bunting game here. Make sure you impede the goalie's vision. Make sure you're getting him to move side to side. Really just make his life a living hell. And yeah, the Penguins have done that quite a bit to some really good goalies this year, and they've gotten some wins out of it. Maybe not as many as I want them to get, of course, but they've still gotten some wins out of that. So again, I'll say it one more time. I want this to be, another classic Michael Bunting game with how he's been playing this year. So I think if they're able to do that, especially with the way they generate against the Kings, I kind of low-key expect that against the Ducks, especially with the way the Ducks are playing defensively. Penguins have a really good shot of getting to 3-1 on this road trip heading into this next game. They got Seattle coming up, they got San Jose coming up, and then they have Utah coming up. So again, got to continue the good vibes here, my friend.
Yeah, these are four very winnable games for the Penguins against teams that are in one way or another struggling. And yes, we know that the Penguins are among those struggling teams because they have not started the calendar year very well, but they have shown over the last week that they have the ability to bounce back. And now, instead of just constantly bouncing back, we need them to put together consistent performances and beat these next few teams. Now, I don't think it's realistic to expect them to sweep the rest of this trip, but 3-1 really should be the bar, or 3-0-1 if one of these games goes to the extra frame. But you do have to get 6 or 7 of these 8 remaining points to really put yourself back in that wild card conversation, because I think we can pretty much agree here that the wild card is the ceiling for the Penguins at this point. There's no world I see where they jump into the top 3 of the Metro or even that top wild card spot, because that's likely to go to either the team that comes in 4th in the Atlantic or the Metro. So at this point, the Penguins need to be pushing for that second wild card spot. One last thing I want to touch on, and as always, we got to give a hat tip to Taylor Haas, who is just one of the best in the business at covering this team. She had some really fun anecdotes from Penguins practice on Wednesday. First and foremost, got to go with a guy that we have been talking about for quite a couple episodes here, and that's Kevin Hayes. He seems like he is absolutely in his element right now. He was all over Evgeny Malkin in practice, scores a goal in a drill, looks at Gino and just says, "Yeah, did you see that? You see that? That's how it's done," trying to provoke Malkin. And then to add insult to injury, in the puck possession knockout drill, Kevin Hayes not only wins, but he knocks out Evgeny Malkin. and is just all over Gino. So that is something to make this an actual bit of a serious discussion. I think that Kevin Hayes brings to the team is that, yeah, he's a tough guy on the ice, so to speak. He plays a hard game, but he is a guy who is going to bring good vibes to the roster and to the team. And where this team has been the last couple of years and what they're dealing with right now, they absolutely need that.
100%. I mean, he's been even like during, I think it was after the game when Ned scored, Hayes was like, I'm next to Sid, guys. I'm next to Crosby right now in the team photo. And everyone's just like laughing at him. Like, he really does bring those great vibes. It seems like the vibes around the team right now, even though they're not in a playoff spot, the vibes still seem pretty solid. 2-1 on this road trip. Having fun. You saw Michael Bunting doing the Ned chant on the team plane after Ned scored. And then after, this last game, everyone's just cheering, hyping each other up in the locker room against the Kings. The vibes, at the very least, seem to be fun right now. And you're right, man. I love what Kevin Hayes is bringing to this team, both on and off the ice. He's been a really nice fit and should not be coming out of the lineup anytime soon. He's been fantastic lately.
Agreed. He has earned a lot of ice time. And I think you're right. The last couple of years, it seemed like a very tense team, a very overly serious team that wasn't seeming to enjoy what they were doing. This year feels a little bit better, but of course, that has to translate to good play, and they have that opportunity tonight against the Anaheim Ducks. Once again, 10 o'clock from the Honda Center, late night hockey for all you sickos out there. But that's going to do it for our middle segment here. When we come back, Kyle Dubas had his weekly GM show with Josh Getzoff. He touched on a couple of things, including Tristan Jarry, as well as these rumors of a fire sale that we talked about yesterday. We'll get into that when we come back right after this, but we got to tell you first about our last sponsor, and that is Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories, you guys know it. Hunter's going to shake his head here. Of course, it was the Eras Tour. It was a ton of fun. I had an absolute blast. The energy and excitement, it was all unforgettable. And now Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets to your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I talked about it before. During the Christmas season, when I was doing my shopping, I knew that there were a lot of great events coming to Pittsburgh and Philadelphia in 2025, so I was able to use Game Time to get my friends and loved ones tickets to some absolutely awesome events. I found amazing deals and could even see the view from those seats in their panoramic view feature before I bought them, making it an even easier purchase. The super deal, that was impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable pricing. And of course, there's the all-in pricing. That shows you the total up front, so you're not hit with any of those annoying fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, welcome back. This is our final segment of the Thursday edition of Locked On Penguins. I'm Patrick Damp, joined as always by Hunter Hodes. And let's get right into it. Kyle Dubas, the weekly GM show with Josh Getzoff. He, as always, had plenty to say, and we'll focus on the two biggest topics. Let's start with the one that we had yesterday and just knock this one down real quick. The rumors of a fire sale from a random website that has no real connection to anything. As Hunter said yesterday, be careful what you read out there on these here internets, because it ain't always true, and it's likely someone trying to push an agenda. So Kyle Dubas knocks that down, pretty much laughing at the fact that there is no plan for a fire sale, and the plan is going to continue. They're looking for prospects, young talent, and draft picks.
100%. I said it yesterday. You repeated it then. I'll repeat it now for everyone. Yes, people, please be careful what you read on the internet, because there was never going to be a fire sale at this deadline. They're going to move out the veterans that have no contract after this year. Again, Marcus Pettersson, Anthony Beauvillier, Matt Grzelcyk, someone like Matt Nieto, potentially Drew O'Connor, etc. Those are the types of players that they will move. Maybe some other forward like Noah Chara, who has a year left. They could take some calls on Rickard Rakell, who has a year left. But again, I think a Rakell trade, that might happen over the summer. Same with Erik Karlsson. But again, people, there was never going to be a fire sale. I took that report with a grain of salt, especially after what I read yesterday when I was hosting the show. Glad that Kyle Dubas came out and squashed it for good.
Yeah, it was just complete nonsense. Like I said yesterday, it was basically someone taking what the Penguins are doing and just framing it in a different light.
Yeah.
It's not a fire sale. It's the Penguins just being sellers because that is the plan that they're on. Now let's jump into the other thing that Kyle Dubas talked about, and that is the assignment of Tristan Jarry to Wilkes-Barre after being placed on waivers. He basically said he sat down with Tristan Jarry and said, going to the American Hockey League is akin to taking your car to a mechanic when it needs fixed. And he said, I'm going to read his quote here. This is a full reset. So let's go down there and build basically like you're back in your early 20s again. Earn the net down there, put your time in practice, play well, and really start to build your confidence over and over the stretch run. He basically said also it was a number of things that led to the reassignment. It wasn't just a single moment. It wasn't a single game. He also said that the young goalies in the Penguins system have earned a push, whether it's Blomqvist, Larson, Murashov, or Gauthier. So overall, I know that we have talked about how poor Tristan Jarry has played at the NHL level this year. It's not a secret, but it also is encouraging to see him say, listen, I've got better options at my disposal right now, and I'm going to give them a shot. Now you, Tristan Jarry, have to earn your way back in. So between this conversation he had with Josh Getzoff and then him owning the mistake after they put him on waivers, this is a very encouraging sign for me from Kyle Dubas.
Yeah, I mean, I knew from the moment he signed that deal, it was going to age pretty poorly. I've said that on social media a lot. I said it on here a lot. I'm glad I've ended up right at least about that. I've definitely been wrong about some things on this show. I'm definitely not going to get everything right with my takes, but I at least will say that I was right about that. I still don't think he's going to see the remainder of this contract here in Pittsburgh because I think at some point he's going to eventually get moved to another team. I don't think they're going to buy him out. I said that last week. That just doesn't really solve anything. You have too much money on your cap for too many years. Yes, I know the cap is going up quite a bit this summer and next summer, but there's just really no point to buying him out. They're going to have to figure out a way to sucker a team into taking him at some point. But, I did like what Dubas said, about him having a full reset in Wilkes-Barre. If he can play decently down there, get his value up ever so slightly, I'll be curious to see if another NHL team maybe sees his prior work with the Penguins, not this year, obviously, but his prior work, at least for a bit, and is like, okay, maybe there is still a decent goaltender in there. We would be interested. What would it take to acquire him from you? Again, I'm just spitballing. That's best case scenario for the Penguins because I think it's still unlikely that he's going to get a lot of starts at the main NHL level for them just because of the way Blomqvist has been playing, the way Ned has played these last couple of starts. But I still feel like, again, if he's able to recoup some of that value down there, maybe, just maybe, a team will come calling. But again, I still don't think he's going to get too many more starts up on the main squad. We've seen what he is with this team, what he is with another team. That's a little bit to be determined. But again, I just don't really see a world where he becomes the full-time starting netminder for this franchise again.
Neither do I. And I keep coming back to this, and it's not to excuse any of his recent play or the way he has been in the net for the last 2 years. But I do keep coming back to, I think there is some sort of a mental block there for Tristan Jarry because we see it in spurts, and we've seen it in spurts over the past couple of seasons where he plays like a goalie who can be a legitimate starter in the NHL, but then it falls apart for whatever reason. And I think there's just something in his head right now that he knows he can't get it done as a Penguin, and it just manifests in his head and it causes him to play poorly. If you send him to any of the other 31 NHL teams, I think he probably figures it out. Does he become a Vezina candidate? No. but does he become a serviceable starting NHL goalie? The talent, the athleticism,
Maybe.
and even to an extent, the resume is there for him to be that. But for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem like it's going to work in Pittsburgh. So we will see what happens with Tristan Jarry over these next few weeks, few months, and into the offseason. We'll obviously keep our eyes and ears to the ground on that one and update you when we hear anything. But that is going to do it for the Thursday edition of Locked On Penguins. Hunter and I will be back on Friday to recap this game against the Ducks, as well as get you set for the weekend matchup against the Seattle Kraken. But for now, for Hunter Hodes, I am Patrick Damp. Thank you as always for tuning in, and we will be back on Friday.